Picture a lavish banquet in 11th century Europe. A long table draped in white linen, candles blazing, red wine shimmering like blood in silver goblets. And then, the nobles, owners of castles and vast estates, reach out and grab their meat with bare hands. Yes, they ate with their fingers, not because they were poor, not because metal was scarce, but because they believed that using a fork was an insult to God. It sounds like a historical punchline, but it isn't. There was a time when the fork was viewed as a tool of the devil. Some even died, and their deaths were taken as proof that God disapproved of metal-touching food. The real question isn't, how could they be so naive? It's this. How did a tiny object, 4 steel prongs, spark a theological drama that lasted for centuries? And if we laugh at them today, could there be something we use daily that future generations will look back on and shake their heads? The story begins in the 11th century, when a Byzantine princess, often identified as Maria Argyropoulina, arrived in Venice to marry an Italian nobleman. She brought with her an unusual object from the East, a small, golden fork with 2 prongs. Just 2, not 4. It looked more like a miniature skewer, designed to spear food and lift it to the mouth without touching it by hand. For Byzantine aristocrats, this was a symbol of refinement. For the Western Church at the time, it was arrogance. Some sermons from that era record pointed criticism. Why replace the fingers God has given us with iron? It may sound extreme, but consider the context. In the Middle Ages, nearly every human action was viewed through a religious lens. Eating wasn't merely survival, it was ritual. Using one's hands, something natural, was considered humble. Introducing metal tools suggested luxury, distance, even defiance of the divine order. Then the princess fell ill and died not long after her arrival. Disease in that era was as common as the flu is today. But to many observers, her death was divine punishment. Proof. They believed that the fork did not belong at a Christian table, and so the fork small, silent, and practical was branded with heavy words, prideful, vine, even wicked. But the story doesn't end there. Human beings share a predictable weakness. If something is genuinely useful, they eventually return to it. Fast forward a few centuries. Europe began interacting more deeply with other cultures, and in Italy, one dish gradually rose to symbolic status: pasta. Long strands, slippery, served hot. Try eating spaghetti with your hands just after it's lifted from boiling water at 100 degrees Celsius, the temperature at which water bubbles vigorously and can cook an egg in minutes. Your fingers would become the side dish. A knife? Inefficient. A spoon? It slips. At this point, the 2-pronged fork began proving its worth. It could pierce, twist, and gather strands of pasta into a manageable coil. Yet 2 prongs weren't perfect. Food slipped through. So the design evolved 3 prongs. Then 4. 4 created a mechanical sweet spot. Enough spacing to pierce. Enough surface area to hold. This wasn't random. It was the result of centuries of trial and error. Gradually, the fork shed its demonic reputation. It became a solution to a very human problem: how to eat without burning your fingers or staining your clothes. And when an object solves a specific discomfort, it seeps quietly into habit. Habit, over time, becomes standard. Do you see what happened? An item once cursed was invited back to the table. Its rehabilitation wasn't driven by convenience alone. It was amplified by influence. In the 16th century, the fork gained what we might today call a powerful influencer: Catherine de' Medici. When she left Italy to marry into the French royal family, she brought her dining customs, including the fork. In the French court, everything carried symbolic weight. How you ate reflected your status, and as nobles began lifting forks, they unintentionally sent a message: we are different. Eating with one's hands slowly came to be seen as uncivilized, not because hands were inherently dirtier if properly washed. They are just as clean as a utensil, but because the fork created distance, a layer between human and food. That distance carried psychological meaning. It signaled self-control, restraint. You did not lunge at your meal. You approached it with composure, and so the fork, once condemned as sinful, became a measure of civilization. Table manners were codified. The number of prongs standardized. Materials shifted from gold to silver, and eventually to stainless steel. Silver offered chemical advantages. It reacts minimally with food, preserves flavor, and even possesses natural antibacterial properties. From 2 golden prongs that sparked controversy to the 4 polished steel ones resting in your kitchen drawer, that journey spans nearly 1,000 years. And every time you press a fork into your food, you're repeating a cultural decision that your ancestors once argued about fiercely.